Good morning, everyone. And I'd like to officially welcome Jenny. The first thing we always ask our special guests is if you could just introduce yourself and share a little bit about your career journey up into this point in time. And from there, we've got some questions that the students will want to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me today. This is super exciting for me. Again, my name is Jenny. I work at UW-Milwaukee. I've been here for about 20 years now. So my job is I am the animal care facility director. So I'm in charge of making sure all the animals here are happy, healthy, well cared for. That's my daily job. I'll explain a little bit to you about how I got here. So I was always interested in science, mostly interested in animals and biology. So I went to college at UW-Eau Claire and I got an undergraduate degree in biology. After that, I decided I wanted to further my education and I went to graduate school. I originally thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, and then I kind of changed my career path after I did some job shadowing at a vet clinic. I decided that really wasn't the path that I wanted to take. So I got a master's degree from UW-Oshkosh in animal physiology, because I still wanted to follow the goal of working with animals, but I wasn't really sure how that was going to look at that point. Following my graduate degree, I got a job in Madison working at a company called Bell Laboratories, where I was an assistant scientist. And I did work with animals daily in that job. After a couple of years there, a career opportunity opened up here at UW-Milwaukee for me to be a manager of the facility. So I moved here to Milwaukee and I've been here ever since. So my job basically is we take care of research animals here. So I work with faculty and research staff. My job is I hire the staff that provide the daily care for the animals. So we're the ones that come in, take care of the animals, do their food and water, clean their enclosures every day. I'm the one that orders all the food and the bedding. I'm the emergency on-call person. So I'm basically on call every day. So if something happens here, it gets too hot, too cold, we lose power, I'm the one that comes in and responds to make sure all the animals are okay. So it's my daily job to make sure they're happy and healthy. I have student caretakers that work for me. So they are college students. I primarily recruit through our pre-veterinary club here, but I do have students that are not pre-veterinary students at all. I have some journalism majors and some art majors that just really love working with animals. So I have students from all backgrounds working here. I have one full-time animal technician that helps me with animal care every day and running the facility. And then I have one part-time technician that helps as well. So as far as the animals we work with, we're an all small animal facility here. So we work primarily with rodents. So I work a lot with rats and mice, and I work with fish and frogs. I've worked with large bird colonies. I have worked with rabbits before, so we have had rabbits here. And when I initially started this job, we also worked with pigs. So we have pigs here as well. But right now it's primarily rodents, rats, and mice. Our students work every day taking care of the animals. So they come in and they clean cages, they do food and water, they help me with daily maintenance in the facility. I'll be showing you some pictures of kind of what it looks like to work here, since most people have no idea what it is like. So I'll show you some pictures of that. Some things I did to get this job as far as animal experience, I did volunteer a lot at my local humane societies. So I spent a lot of time walking dogs, socializing with dogs, that kind of thing, just to get some basic animal experience. And a lot of our students that I hire also have similar experience like that. So they've just done some volunteering stuff, working at a shelter. Anybody who's worked with animals at all kind of has a leg up when I'm looking for people to hire, because they have some idea how messy animals can be, because they can be kind of messy. So we're all animal lovers here. That's our job, to make sure they're happy, they're healthy. Communication is super important in my job. I interact with the faculty and the research staff every day to make sure they're getting what they need with their animals, because my job is really customer service and animal care. So I do have some pictures. I'll show you. I'm going to share my screen so I can pull up some pictures of what it looks like to work here.
And Emily was wondering, because I was thinking when you said you work with animals, I'm like, well, she spends all her days with like cats and dogs and snuggling them. So Emily, and you mentioned rodents, which was probably for me, probably one of the animals that I'm most terrified of. So were you, or have you been scared of any animals before you start working with them?
No, actually not. And that's very common for people to be afraid of the rodents. That's a pretty common occurrence we have here. And to be honest, once you start working with them, they are fabulous. They make fabulous pets. They're really fun to take care of. So I'm going to show you some pictures of them. They're really fun to watch. They all have really unique personalities. So they're really cool animals to work with. And a little tidbit about myself, the only thing I'm afraid of is June bugs. So I'm not afraid of any animals, but June bugs terrify me to death. I don't know why, but they do.
They terrify me too, but a lot of things do in the animal world. So that's not a good barometer to measure against me.
Yeah, we had a really large bird colony here too when I first started, and there were people that were terrified of birds, and I understand why, but yeah, you end up loving them. They're just great to work with. So we get to work with some really unique species. So this is a picture of one of our students. This is kind of how we look every day when we're taking care of the animals. We dress up in lots of PPE. So she's got a gown, gloves, hair bonnet, face mask, gloves, and she's got scrubs on underneath. She's wearing all this to protect herself from developing an allergy because our animals do have dander that we're exposed to. And she's also wearing it to protect the animals from her. So we do have some animals here that have been genetically modified. So what that means is their immune system is not as strong as an average animal is. So we have to protect them from things in the environment that might make them sick. So we gown up to protect them from anything we might be carrying on our hair, on our clothes, on our shoes, just so we don't expose them to anything in the environment that might make them sick. So this is her after she's coming out of her animal room. So she's just finished cleaning some cages. You can see all the dirty stuff stacked up on her cart, and she's getting ready to take that to our cage wash facilities. So I'm going to show you a couple other pictures here.
Oh, and then Jenny, AJ actually just typed in before you talked about allergy, like what if you are a person that is allergic? So you reference that is what the protective covering helps the person that could possibly be allergic to that animal.
Yep. So what we do in that case is we do have a respiratory fit program here. So if we do have someone on staff who either comes in with a pre-existing allergy or develops one while they're working, they're fit tested for a special respirator to be able to work with whatever species they've been working with. Otherwise, what I've done is I've had students who are allergic to rats and not mice. So we'll put them working exclusively just with mice, so they're not exposed to the rats at all. So we can do that as well. We do have some of our faculty that have developed allergies over years of working with animals, and they also are fit tested to wear a specialized respirator so that they can continue working with the animals. I'm very fortunate. I'm allergic to cats, but I've never developed an allergy to anything that I've worked with here. So far I've been okay, thankfully. This is a picture of a large steam sterilizer we have. So the animals I mentioned before that are immunocompromised, that have that weakened immune system, we sterilize all the equipment that goes into their room. So their caging, their food, their bedding, their water, anything that's going to come in contact with them, we sterilize first. So this is a huge, really hot oven that basically kills any microbes, bacteria that might be living on the caging or in the water before it goes into the room so that the animals don't get sick from that. So we have 2 of those that we work with every day. This is a picture inside one of our immunocompromised animal rooms. So on the left-hand side, you can see the cages of animals. So you can kind of see the water bottle sticking out off the top. You can see the nesting material on the bottom. All the cages have a card on the front that tell us who's in there, what strain they are, how old they are they boys and girls? They are breeding in here, so we do have baby animals here as well, which is really fun. They have a filter top on the top of their cage. They have a cover on their cage that filters any particulate in the room air from landing in their cages. So again, we don't want them exposed to anything in the air. The machine on the right is a laminar flow hood. So when we're going to take that filter top off the top of their cage, we put them inside that hood, and it filters the room air. So they're protected from anything in the environment. And again, the person taking care of them is all gowned up in safety equipment, a bonnet, face mask, gloves, booties, all of that to protect both the user, the person, and the animals. This is a picture of one of our rat rooms, and these are what we call conventional animals. So they do not have the filter top on the top of their cage. These guys have a perfectly normal, fine functioning immune system, so they're not in danger of developing any problems from what's in the environment. These are what we call long Evans hooded rats. So they kind of look like a cow. They're black and white splotchy. We have several different flavors of rats and mice here, so they can be all different colors and strange. We have albinos, we have brown, we have white, we have gray. And these are the Long Evans hoodeds that are black and white. So this is a pretty standard conventional rat room that we have here. This is a high density mouse room. So in this room, we have high density caging where we can fit lots of cages into a small amount of space. So all of our animals, we follow really strict guidelines on how much space they need to have in their enclosures. So each animal has to have a certain amount of caging space. They're required to have some form of what we call enrichment. That means they have to have something in their environment that mimics their natural environment. So for rodents, they love to chew and they love to nest. So everybody's got something to chew on and something to nest with to keep them happy. And they also have to have a roommate. Rodents are very social animals, so we have to keep them together with a buddy at all times. This is our cage wash room. So this is what it looks like when the cages are done being changed in an animal room, and now they come into our cage wash room to be washed. So our staff will dump the cages in the machine on the right, which is called a dump station. And basically what that does is it's got a high-powered fan that sucks all the allergens away from their face while they're dumping the dirty bedding into the garbage can below. We have those large stainless steel racks against the wall. We stack the dirty bedding on those, and then we'll run them through our cage wash machine, which is, I believe, in the next picture. There it is. Big stainless steel dishwasher, basically. It gets super hot. It's actually large enough to probably drive a small car into. It's really big. So we can process cages through that really quickly. So we can run a load of about 60 to 70 cages in about 20 minutes. So we can process a lot of caging. On an average day, we have between 1,500 and 2,000 animals here. So our cage wash operation stays pretty busy. We have staff running cages through that machine all day long. I'm going to show you some pictures of some specific animals we've had here. We have a colony of pigeons that live here. So it was really hard to take pictures of them individually. So I kind of made a little collage for you. So our students do name the animals. So this is our Animal Resource Center pigeon gang, and they all have names based on their personalities. So Maximus is our big, scary guy that likes to swat at you when you're trying to clean his cages. They're really fun. They like to play ping pong. So you can actually put a ping pong ball in their cage and they'll kick it back and forth with you, which is really fun. This is what we call Disneyland. So this is where we have a large group of mice living. You can see a female sticking her head out from the end of the tube there, the paper towel tube. So we try to keep the animals in as natural of an environment as we can. This enclosure is actually a cattle trough, and we can house 40 to 50 mice in it. One of my students actually built that watering system you see on the right-hand side. So she built that out of PVC tubing to be able to hold the water bottles for the mice. And the students bring in egg cartons from home. They bring in cereal from home, all kinds of things to keep the animals happy while they're in there. This is Igor. So one of the things I like to do in my job is I go to elementary schools and I talk to students about the animals, and I actually bring animals with me to show them. Igor was a rat that came to us with only 3 legs. So he's actually missing his front right leg. So you can see his left leg there, but his right leg is missing. My students gave him a bath before he went to visit the elementary class. So this is him getting a bath before he goes to visit an elementary school. So I have had my own pets here that help me out in the classroom. So this is me in a 3rd grade class talking to the students about working with lab animals. So I actually had all the students put on the PPE that we wear just so they can kind of get an idea of what we do. So that's my son in front of me there being my volunteer. And I let all the students feed the rats and mice cereal treats. So this is them learning about the animals and getting to give them some treats in the classroom environment. That's one of the really fun parts about my job. One of our organizations, national organizations where we get a lot of information from and where they post career opportunities in our field is called the American Association of Laboratory Animal Science. So they do have a website and they have a career page where you can kind of learn about the different careers. I'm a laboratory manager, but we do have technicians in our field. I have a veterinarian on staff here that I work with. So we do have veterinarians in this field as well. It's often a field that not many vets think about, but it's a really cool opportunity to work in. We have several different levels of technician certification you can get. So I am certified as a technician as well as being the facility manager. So lots of opportunities in this field, anywhere from being a caretaker all the way up to being a veterinarian on staff. So lots of different tracks you can take. And I think that wraps up what I had.
Yeah, no, that is great. And we do have some questions that have been coming in over the chat. And thanks again for joining us this morning. But
Yeah.
you said that you manage the overall lab facility. Could you maybe just even break down, like, what does your day-to-day look like? Like, how much time do you spend doing X, Y, and Z at your job?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I come in the morning, the first thing we do is we're required to do animal health checks every day. So we have to walk through and make sure all the animals have food, water, the room conditions are appropriate for them. So that's the first thing we do when we get here. We walk through and make sure all the animals are looking okay, their enclosures are okay, the temperature in the rooms are okay. We do that 365 days a year. We're required to. Then I usually start addressing any researchers that need help with anything for the day. So if there's an animal delivery coming, I set up rooms and caging for animal deliveries that are coming in. If we have a food delivery coming in, I have to prep for that. Our food comes in large pallets, big bags of food. I make sure we have enough supplies sterilized for the animals that live under sterile conditions. I interact with the research staff every day. I train new people on, if they've never worked with an animal before, I'll teach them how to pick up a rat, or if they may need to know how to give an injection, I'll teach them how to do that. I train the new animal care staff. So when we get new student staff in, I'm the person that works with them to train them and working in their animal rooms. During the pandemic, we lost all of our students because the university did shut down. So I was in the rooms every day doing the basic animal care. So I do that as well too when our students are out. I work with a veterinarian. So if we have animals that are sick or injured, need some sort of treatment or care, I work with a veterinarian to address that. I do a lot of our what we call compliance. So that's the rules and regulations we have to follow to be able to work with the animals, because it is a privilege to work with them. So I do a lot of the behind the scenes processing of all of the rules and regulations we have to follow. Our faculty have to submit proposals to work with animals that have to be approved before they can work with them. So I'm heavily involved in making sure their project is acceptable to be working with the animals. They have to make sure the animals are going to be well cared for. They're going to address any pain the animals may be in. They have to have plans in place for how they're going to address that. I respond to if the power's out, if we lose air conditioning, if there's a flood, all of that stuff, that's my responsibility to respond to. So I've got to figure out how we're going to care for the animals if any of those things happen. So it's really, my job is very different every day. It depends on who's coming into the facility that day, what they might need help with. Yeah, if we've got animals arriving or food arriving, that kind of stuff. So it's very different every day.
Yeah, so then you must essentially be on call like 24 hours a day then too. Does anyone share that responsibility with you, or is it just you?
So right now what we do is myself and the full-time technician, we rotate weekends and holidays. So we take turns being on call on weekends and holidays. But in my role, I'm pretty much prepared to answer the phone all the time because I know something can go wrong at any point in time. So my job is to make sure someone responds if there's a problem with the animal facility. So yeah.
Okay, great. And then Mahit was wondering, and I think you shared this when you talked about bringing a veterinarian in, but if in that animal check time, if you notice that there's something wrong, are you able to diagnose something is wrong, or do you have to bring in the veterinarian at that time?
It really depends. Sometimes a lot of our healthcare concerns are pretty minor, so we're able to address them right away. One of the things that happens really commonly in rodents is their teeth grow kind of like our fingernails do. So their teeth grow continuously. So they have to chew on something hard to keep their teeth short. Otherwise, their teeth get really long. So occasionally we'll have rodents that, for whatever reason, they might have a crooked tooth or something, and their teeth will grow too long, and then they can't eat anymore. So what we do is we actually put them under anesthesia, and we clip their teeth with the fingernail clippers. So stuff like that, we can do pretty much on the spot if we need to. If we've got animals, that are not getting along, that's really common in male animals when they start to get aggressive with each other. That's something we can separate them right away and address that problem. So it really depends. Every once in a while we'll have a case where we don't know what's going on and we'll have to call the vet in to take a look. Surgeons, so if we have students or graduate students, postdocs that are going to be performing surgery, they go through training with our veterinarian. So our veterinarian trains them on proper surgical techniques and surgical care following surgery. So that is done by our exclusively by our vet. But I'll do all the animal handling training. I can teach people how to do dosing, restraint. If they need to hold on to a rat for something, I can teach them that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
A couple more questions along the line of like the research side of it, and then we'll probably start. We're getting some questions around education too, but can you share at all like what type of research is actually happening? Like what kind of questions or theories are being developed in the lab or through the research process being developed?
So we have faculty from all different branches of our university here working with animals. We have quite a few in the biology department. And a lot of their research is focused on disease models. So we do have cancer models here. We have multiple sclerosis. We have retinitis pigmentosa, which ultimately causes blindness. We do have researchers that are now adventuring into the COVID world. So we do have some mouse models that are being looked at for treatments for COVID. And then we have a large neuroscience department. So we have some researchers that are studying age-related memory loss and exercise and memory. So we have rats that run on treadmills and swim in swimming pools to evaluate their level of memory once they've exercised for a while. So it's really interesting stuff. We do have some animals that are part of a post-traumatic stress disorder. So that relates back to people from the military. So when they come back and have that high level of stress, we have animals here helping us investigate how we can treat that and kind of extinguish that fear. So we've got them all across the board. We do have large breeding colonies here. So we do breed a lot of our own mice, especially. So those animals are purpose bred here in the facility. So we can focus on, if it's a cancer model, we do have prostate cancer here, so they can focus on that. We do have a breast cancer model as well, so we can focus on that. So yep, kind of all over the place. We have some of our fish are used for looking at toxins in the water, so exposed to toxins that are released in our wastewater system. And then we have fish that are also used for things such as fetal alcohol syndrome. So they're exposed to alcohol when they're embryos. Lots of really interesting stuff. And field studies too. We have field researchers too that look at animals in the wild.
Wow, that's really interesting. One of the other, Samantha noticed, and I saw this too, when you talked about having some of your rodents that had immunocompromised systems versus the healthy rodents. How do you find the ones that are immunocompromised? And she actually was wondering, do you make them immunocompromised as part of the process to separate them out? Are there things that you do to give them that immune challenge?
That's a great question. So we actually purchased those. So there are large animal production facilities that will breed animals to whatever specification you're looking for. So for instance, our mice that are here as part of a prostate cancer model, they come in genetically created to develop prostate cancer at a young age. So we order them in that way. We do have some researchers that are capable to create a genetic mutation if they're interested in it. But most of the animals, we order them in that way. They're super expensive. So some of our mice are between $250, $400 a piece. So they can be super expensive. So that's why we take really extra care making sure that we keep them safe and healthy while they're here.
Oh, wow, that's interesting how that all works out. So, okay, obviously we have a couple of students that would like to know, like, what is your favorite animal to work with?
Oh man, that's hard. Mice are super fun to watch. They're really goofy. So I could sit and watch the mice in Disneyland for a long time because they're really funny. I really enjoy working with rats though. They have very different personalities. They are very social animals, very curious animals. They make awesome pets, just an FYI. So they're really fun to work with. I love working with rats. Mice are fun to watch. They kind of smell bad though. Rats are really fun. I prefer rats, I guess. The birds were great. They're really noisy and messy though, so not so much birds.
Okay. I was gonna say, we know your least favorite animal is a June bug.
Yeah, June bug.
But what about in the research side of it? Do you have you just kind of said birds are kind of the messiest? Is that?
Yeah, out of the ones I've worked with, birds were probably the most challenging. We had a large colony of ring doves here, probably around 600 birds. They could all fly. So it was a really rough day when you came in and there were 120 birds loose in a room and you had to try and corral them all. So birds were challenging for that reason. The pigeons are really fun though. They're super smart. So it's fun working with them. It's just not fun to clean up after them because they're really messy and loud.
Yeah, well, that's great. Okay, so we had a handful of students that were starting to probe into some of those education-based questions. So
Yep.
starting off from like high school, like are there certain, like if you have an interest in this type of work in your future, like what would you recommend as far as courses that you should take in high school?
Yeah, I definitely focused heavily on biology. So I took as many biology courses as I could get my hands on. A lot of anatomy and physiology. I even took lots of like plant classes and just any kind of biology. In college, I was a chemistry minor, so that really helped to have a chemistry background as well going into this field. Yeah, I just focused as much as I could in the biology realm, and then I did as much volunteering on the side as I could. So getting exposure to shelter animals, that kind of thing, gave me really a foot in the door when I was looking at this career.
That's great. And that, Mahit was actually wondering, I think biology is such a broad term. Like what kind of curriculum is covered under the biology scope? Like what are things that you are going to learn through that pathway?
So I really focused on anatomy and physiology. Once I got to graduate school, I really delved into the animal physiology background. But in undergraduate, I took genetics and plant biology and animal biology. I spent 3 weeks at a course in the Chequamegon National Forest up north where we collected samples of salamanders and things like that. So just trying to get exposure to as many different kinds of animal environments as I could, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do until I got to graduate school, to be honest. So I was kind of just dabbling in a little bit of everything to try and find out what I wanted to do. I took a class where I volunteered for the DNR counting ducks out on lakes in Eau Claire. So I'd go out on a boat with my professor and we'd count ducks. So just kind of all over the place, so I could figure out what I really wanted to end up doing.
Yeah, I think that's actually, you pointed out something important in that process is you knew that you loved animals and you had that passion. So you essentially just opened yourselves up to as many different opportunities in that field to even then start ruling out things that you might want to do or might not want to do, because I don't know, maybe the counting ducks wasn't a very exciting experience for you. And that
was really fun. It's not something I want to do full time, but it was fun.
Okay. But that might have helped you rule out like maybe DNR is not the path that I want to go into or something like that. So the other thing I was wondering if you could share, you mentioned at the beginning that you initially were thinking you wanted to be a veterinarian. So what about that made you change your mind? Like what was it that made you decide that you didn't want to? Because I think a lot of students think like if you have like animals, veterinarian is like where I need to go.
Yes. So the reason, and this is my personal reasoning, I job shadowed a couple of veterinarians when I was in college just to get a feel for what it was like. My initial reaction to those experiences was working with the customers with their pets could be really challenging. Sometimes the owners, they don't follow the veterinarian's advice always. So sometimes they could want to ignore a treatment that's really necessary for an animal. It was really challenging for me in those situations where the owner didn't necessarily agree with the treatment that the veterinarian recommended. So I found it wasn't a good fit for me for that reason. It was especially challenging for me because I'm a dog person. And when they were treating dogs and an owner would disagree with the vet on something and maybe not make what the decision I would make with my own dog, that was a hard situation for me. So I kind of went away from that track knowing that I probably couldn't do that on a day-to-day basis. I will say the veterinarians that I work with here, all three of them started as small animal vets, and they changed career paths because the challenge for them was they spend a lot of their time administering vaccinations to animals, and that's a large part of the job. So if they kind of felt like it was getting a little monotonous for them. So they were looking for something that had a little more variety. So this is a field that I knew nothing about until I got to grad school. And it's been an amazing adventure. You get to work with species you'd never see otherwise. And it really is very different every day. So I don't do the same thing over and over every day. So that's one of the cool parts about this job. And our job really is to promote animal care, animal welfare. That's what we do every day.
That's great. And the work that you do, like what if you're someone that, likes research and that, but maybe doesn't want to touch animals? Is there some options for you if you fall into that boat?
Yeah, I mean, our facility is not big enough to have this kind of staff, but we have what we call cage wash technicians, and all they do is process the materials when they get to cage wash. We have students that work in the research field here that aren't responsible for the direct animal contact, but they'll work with, like, they'll look at cell cultures, or they'll process a blood sample when it comes out of a rat's tail or something like that. So there are opportunities to be in the field, but not necessarily the one handling the animals.
Awesome. Okay. We're just getting pretty close to the end of our time. So the last pieces we like to touch on is, what is it that you love the most about your job?
I always tell my students that work for me now, I took this job for the animals and I stay in this job for the students. So I love animals. That's what I wanted to do with my career. So that's what I love about my job, is working with animals every day. But really the piece that keeps me in this job is getting to work with the college students. I really love it. I love how enthusiastic they are when they get here to learn about the animals, to learn about the job. I love following their career paths after they leave here. So I tend to pester my former students to ask, hey, what are you doing now? It's really cool to see them develop in their careers and how many of them change their career path because of this job. So I have students that, started out a journalism major and they end up going into nursing because they just loved the science that they saw here. And I have students that started on a track of being a small animal vet. And I just had a student graduate last May, and now she's a lab animal vet. So it's really cool to see them, how they change their minds, how it kind of molds their future. So working with the animals, but definitely working with the students.
Okay, great. And actually that comment actually helped Gracie come up with a question on college. And are there certain colleges that are better if you're interested in an animal career, or certain degrees that would be better?
Well, as far as in Wisconsin, the only place you can get your veterinary degree is at Madison. So if that's something you're interested in, Madison is the way to go. We do have a lot of the technical colleges, though, do offer lab animal certifications. So you can go and get either a vet tech certification or a lab animal tech certification at the technical school. So you can do that as well. As far as for me, I went to Eau Claire and Oshkosh. So I just got a master's degree in animal physiology and ended up being the facility director here. So you can kind of follow the path of just staying in the sciences, getting as much animal exposure as you can, and end up being, in charge of a facility rather than being the veterinarian.
Awesome. Okay. So our last and final question is, what is some advice that you would give to all those students that we have tuning in are about the high school age, or maybe at the very forefront of their college? What is some advice that you would give to them if they're interested in pursuing a career that you have? Like, what are things that they could do, or things that you would recommend that they do?
I would just say, keep your horizons open, investigate all different kinds of things. So if you're like me and you like animals, try out a bunch of field courses if you can. Volunteer at different places. There's always looking for volunteers to help with animals if you can, just to get exposure to all different kinds of backgrounds. You can kind of figure out what it is you're really interested in. Because for me, this was a complete accident that I ended up here. So it was just about kind of investigating all different animals I could work with and avenues I could follow. So keep your options open, try different stuff. I'm really big about the motto of try something that scares you every day. So do something scary every day, something you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And Jenny, thanks so much for your time today and sharing with us a little snippet of what you do. It was helpful to be able to see some of those pictures of the lab, and even just get a better understanding of what life inside of a lab would look like. I know I'll have to remove my idea of just like snuggling with cats and dogs all day.
Yeah. In some facilities they do that, where they have cats and dogs, they do, but we don't here. I snuggle with rats and mice.
Right? Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you all. Bye.